So you kind of mentioned, a couple of you kind of mentioned talking about kind of internet, hotspot, broadband. I don't know if your schools have individually done research on your district and how your broadband looks for your
Yeah.
students, but if you could estimate what percentage of students do you think have access to broadband in their home in your district, and do you think that number is acceptable? What challenges does that create for you?
Kaitlyn, I like to jump on this. Last year, we had our ITC look at all of our addresses for our students. We had about 1,240 students last year that they looked at addresses. 485 did not have access to any broadband internet. Could not get internet at all. Broadband, no internet capability, no Wi-Fi. So then we looked at what is the possibility of them getting a 2G or 3G cell service. And only about 100 of those could guarantee indoor 2G or 3G cell service. That's not acceptable. What's not also acceptable is since the pandemic in March, I've not seen one tower being built. I haven't seen any infrastructure for any type of internet services at all. And I know that it's difficult sometimes for private companies to invest maybe in areas like Coshocton County because they don't see a financial return. But one thing that our state can do is they can provide funds and incentives for these companies to build infrastructure, which will bring jobs to the area, will bring taxes to the area and funds to the area. That's probably the most disappointing thing that I've experienced. And then it leaves it up to the school for us to try to get internet services for our families. And we've done a lot of work with our townships. We're very proud of a partnership we created with Plainfield, the small village in our district, and Linton Township that partnered of creating a mesh hotspot in that area. We're working with other townships with CARES money of trying to create hotspots. We've worked with a private vendor that's providing hotspots for our families, and we traveled throughout our district this summer to see whether or not they would work. So we have a lot of families with these little mobile hotspots. Just so currently we're working with our townships. So I'm seeing government at the local level working. The issue is at the state level, like the broadband grant that came out, in a sense, it's nice, but it doesn't do what it needs to do. Throwing money at it, creating a Band-Aid, we could create a hotspot. What we need is Oxford Township, White Eyes Township, Lafayette Township, Linton Township, Adams. They need to have the same capability of getting internet that people in West Lafayette have, or Coshocton in Newcomerstown. It's not fair, and it should be a utility. I can't stress enough, I get really passionate about this, is that it's not an even playing field. We're doing a lot of our work, and even private citizens are doing a lot of their work through the internet, and that it's going to be a disservice that where you live, again, once again, is going to determine what you're able to do as a citizen. And to me, I want to see something built. I just want to see, when I go drive to White Eyes Township, I see Verizon trucks or T-Mobiles or Spectrum or something being built. And I'm hoping that the state legislature, when they give money, think about the infrastructure and think about when you give money, not putting a stop date on it where we're able to provide internet services up through the end of this year. But once January 1st comes, we got to come up with another plan of how to continue to fund it. And once again, it's kind of a Band-Aid approach. It looks good in the media that money is being tossed and thrown to schools, but sometimes the burden placed on schools to figure out how we're going to carry this out throughout the year. And the issue is we are giving people hotspots that aren't working. And then we're trying to figure out other ways of providing education for remote learners, because we have some remote learners not coming because they're fearful, some because they don't want a mask, and that really doesn't matter. What matters is they should have the same equal opportunity to have the same resources of any other student in our district. So one thing we can't ask enough for our state legislators to do is really provide legislation that will provide infrastructure in our county. That everybody in our county should have equal access to the internet. It should be like, we all have a phone line, right? Most of us all have a phone line. Everybody should have an internet line.
Yeah, I hear you.
Thanks.
That is very important to our district, and especially I can see that you're passionate, and a lot of people are very passionate about getting that access to our rural communities. Mr. Summers.
I mean, this is a big thing. I think Matt has said a lot of things very well there. I mean, just the idea that Riverview High School, I mean, we're the biggest district in the county. So we're, not only by student number, we're also 376 square miles. So we're a monstrous geographic district. And until last year, we didn't have cell phone service at our high school, junior high, and my central office. I mean, in other words, there was no tower, there was nothing. Warsaw, our biggest community in our district, didn't have cell phone service, let alone high-speed internet. So you can't even get a cell phone tower. I mean, we did a lot of work with Warsaw City Council, with the sheriff's office. Finally got a tower in running, I believe, someplace in Warsaw, that we picked up some cell phone service here. From a safety standpoint, outside of education, just from a safety standpoint, when you can't text or pick up a phone call to a teacher down the, point is, it's horrible. I mean, that's all. I mean, so to ask for a percentage, I mean, we did surveys like everybody did, but where we surveyed our students and how many of you have high-speed internet. The problem with that question to find out is, what one person may define as internet. Somebody may have a booster at their house to where their cell phone can get on YouTube and they can watch, a video from whatever. But to equate that to two kids getting on Edmentum and doing a curriculum and watching videos and being able to function a school day, that's a hard question to ask somebody. And what we're finding out now is the people that thought they can't. All right. And we did try to specify that question, make sure they knew. But just going back to, I know this is about high-speed internet and I'm taking it to cell phone, but if you don't have cell phone service, a hotspot's not going to do you a whole lot of good, no matter how much money the state gives me to buy them. So if you take Riverview, I'm going to guess, I don't know about Ridgewood, but I'm going to guess we probably would have the most remote areas, just because we cover so much, Fallsburg. I mean, we cover a lot of area. And I could only, when we wrote our grant for the access, I think 44 hotspots are what I put in, 44 out of 2,000 kids. Now I know that I've got more than 44 kids that don't have internet. Okay. But I have 44 hotspots, and I'm not even sure all 44 of those hotspots will work at the place that I'm going to try to put them. Okay. So what we ended up doing was we wrote grants into that just to put, I'm going to call them antennas. I know I'm outdating myself, on top of our buildings, just so we can expand our internet into our parking lots, just into our parking lots. I mean, where it should already be, you would think in a school in in 2020, you would think that you should be able to get into any one of our main campus parking lots and be able to pick up internet. So basically what we did to create, equitable access, if you want to use that term, is, well, now if you're remote and you drive into Riverview's parking lot at their high school, you can do your 6 hours worth of work sitting there in the parking lot in the evening. That is not and I know, I mean, your future aspirations and stuff, if I can say one thing to you, I mean, and I'm pretty active with a lot of legislative type things. And so I am at the State House a lot, and people have to come here to see it. In other words, I've talked to a lot of legislators over the years and explained to them that we don't have access, and they'll try to show me a chart and says, well, it shows you need to come here to see what this is. And I think if people actually come in, I want to invite any legislator that wants to come visit Riverview and try to call home when you get here. Try to call your wife or your husband when you get here and see how well that works for you. Let me take you out to, we just closed a building that we've used for the last 50 some years, or more than that, actually, it's probably 80 some years, that didn't have the building, the actual school building we were educating children in for the last almost 100 years, didn't have high-speed internet to it. And it just closed 2 years ago. So, major issue. I don't know what percentage to give you, but I think you get the point. In it's not equitable. It's not equitable, and equity is a big word right now. That is a hard to define word. I know going into this pandemic, I work with the Cup Patterson funding formula. And so one of the big things is equitable. And it was hard to define to a lot of legislators, plus superintendents and stuff from the suburbs and the cities and stuff, what is equitable. The pandemic defined equitable. It defined equitable. You giving us the same set of standards to live by, the same marks that we have to get our kids to, but we don't have near the ability or the tools and the resource to use to get those kids to those same marks. And so it should be a number one priority. I agree with Maz's statement. It should be just as accessible as putting a phone line into your house, which none of us even use our landlines anymore, right? To use a landline. I mean, it has to be, that has to be a priority. And while I enjoy the $10,500 grant I got to buy hotspots, I mean, I'll take any money that comes, that doesn't touch what it takes in our area.
Yeah, I can see that's very, very important. Dr. Heyer?
Well, we don't have quite the, the access issues within the city. Our school district obviously is much smaller. So our issues would be, more for open enrolled students. But our challenge is probably just economic, so that we may have broadband, people may have access to, either whether it's a cell phone or just internet access through a provider, but they can't afford it maybe. So Summers was talking about 40 Wi-Fis. We had 90 families that said they didn't have enough access. And I think we learned a lot in the spring when people thought, I do have a device and access. Well, they were talking about, I could do something with my cell phone. And then it's like, now I got 3 or 4 kids to use my one cell phone to try to do their schoolwork. So it's about providing the device and the internet access. But we've been partnering with the city, so we've been fortunate there. We're working to get hotspots, Wi-Fi access around our community in some of our parks. And so that's a good partnership. And we're also working as well with getting things for our campus outside in our parking lots. But it's really about getting those MiFis that really work off cell towers to the families. And that's just, again, the haves and the have-nots. I mean, there's got to be some basic things that we need in rural Ohio in order to have our kids compete. Otherwise, we're telling them, you can all have this car. All the other kids are getting a full tank of gas, and they've got to drive to, Pittsburgh. You get a half a tank. Figure out what you're going to do when gas runs out. That's really not fair. But we each have a little bit even, different challenges here within Coshocton County. But definitely having enough devices. And I will say that even if we had the internet right now, we're all experiencing issues. We can't get devices. In other words, the laptops and things that we're trying to provide are all on back order. It's a problem, obviously, across the country. And most of us are waiting until, November, December, when we thought we could have things before school started. So we have enough at this point, but we don't have enough to do everything we wanted to do within our buildings because we've had to provide those for our students.
Right. I can see how important broadband is and how passionate you guys are about this. And I really appreciate that, because that's one thing that I try to emphasize, not just on the campaign trail, but also just in my personal life. I mean, I barely have cell phone access at my house alone. And I think it's really important, the points that you guys have brought up about access in both availability in the cell towers that are being built, but also the affordability.